Welcome back to my space. My name is Ari, and I was going to go over the books that I read in January. I read 8 books, I want to say, in January. I'll remember after I go through all of them. And so, welcome. Alright, so the first book I read, I technically just finished. I started it in end of December. It was Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. I finally got into the series in December just because I was pushing it off. I was worried it wasn't going to be worth the hype. I think the series as a whole was worth the hype. This one, there were moments in it that were a little bit slower, and I don't know, struggled a bit to get through it, but I did finish it, just not as fast as I did Fourth Wing. Did enjoy it. I do have one of the Sprayed Edges versions, and I think I gave it 4.5 stars. I did give it 3.5 stars, just because the slower scenes really ruined it for me. Like, they just knocked me out of the reading. And then I would have to re-get back in once the fighting was happening, once things were progressing. And so, close enough. The first book I gave 4.5 stars. And I think I gave the last one a higher rating as well. It was just this book I read was a reread, Atomic Habits by James Clear. I have reread this 3 or 4 times now at the start or end of each year, just to kind of help remind me of rebuilding new habits and starting new things, and to continuously get 1% better. I think it helps me, especially at the start of the year when everything is new year, new me. And yeah, I really like this one a lot. I don't ever really rate my nonfictions just for the sake of it's a nonfiction. I don't know. I'm not a big nonfiction girly, so I can't be like, oh, this is a 5 stars for a nonfiction. It was good. I reread it every year, but I don't know. It's just not my thing. Okay, so the next book I read was on my Kindle. It's called A Vibe. It's a pandemic romance of these 2 people who meet right before the pandemic, and they end up becoming roommates and end up dating. I will say, the writing overall was okay. Not my favorite one, not the worst one, but the romance scenes and the smut scenes, that was pretty good. And so I gave it, I gave it 2.5 stars. Like I said, not my favorite book, but those smut scenes were very good. So if you're looking for a nice little romance book to just knock out real quick, that's the one. The next book I read was called A Vibe. That one was a pandemic romance where they had met right before the pandemic started and then ended up living together throughout the pandemic. That one, the writing wasn't my favorite, but I did like the romance scenes a lot. And so I gave it 2.5 stars just for that reason. I just couldn't get behind the writing, and some parts were just a little bit cringy for me. But if you like romance and like to read those little romance scenes, I'd recommend it. Don't expect Nobel Peace Prize winning writing by any means, but romance scenes were it. So the next book I read was also another reread. This is my favorite book of all time. I have reread it a couple times now. I just absolutely love this story. I love all things that have been written by T.J. Klune in one way or another. This one's about an orphanage? Can I speak? Where a caseworker has to go out and see if these magical children will either bring about the end of times, and if the master of the home is actually taking care of the home and the children involved in it. Absolutely loved it. The children were the most realistic kids that I've ever read in a book. I worked with kids at one point earlier in my career. I've worked with kids with trauma. These kids have got trauma. They're realistic, and they want to be kids. They don't want to be the big bad thing that people are fearing. They just want to live their lives. One kid just wants to become a bellhop, regardless that he is a monster and that he's supposed to be this big bad thing. Always recommend this book. It's a cute romance book, and in the last year, the duology, the second book came out, and in the last year, the second book came out, if I can speak. And so, recommend. Cute little read. And the next book that I read was the sequel to that book, Somewhere Beyond the Sea. So this is continuing the first book. Now you're flipping perspectives to a different character and kind of addressing his own past and what he has gone through himself while still raising the kids, while dealing with his romance, which I didn't mention. There is a romance that happens in the book. It's not the main storyline, but the way that it comes together is just so sweet and just, it's my favorite thing. Another 5-star book. I will probably reread the two of them back to back again, just because I love how the story continued along really nice. One big one of the month, Onyx Storm. I pre-ordered this kind of late, I'll be honest with you, just because I was nervous about starting the series. I already owned book 1 and 2. I don't know why it took me so long to pre-order this one. By the time I pre-ordered it, it came in late. It came in a couple days after the fact of when it released. I didn't want to worry about any spoilers by any means, and so I got the last copy of the audiobook on my Libby app, which if you have a library card or don't have a library card, recommend getting one. Get a lot of free audio and Kindle books on there, and so this one, I could not handle like waiting for it to come in time. So I did the audiobook, finished it in like 2 days. Loved the audiobook. I love the different voices for all the characters. I really felt like I was in there during like the different like battle scenes and everything. And so good. I did get the Barnes & Nobles edition. This was so good. And so I gave it, yeah, this one was a 5-star. I liked how it picked up. It was fast-paced. It was not slow like how the second one book was. And it was so good. So I think so far, this one's my favorite one out of all 3. I hated how it ended. I want the next book now. I know she has to take a break so she doesn't get burnt out. But I'm ready for the next one. I'm curious to see how many more books she releases. If it's going to be 1 versus 2 more. Or even more than that. But I love this series. I'm loving it a lot. I'm glad I finally read it. And yeah, next book I read was my book club pick. So I have been in a book club for the last 2 or 3 years now at this point with a group of my friends that I've just, we've been friends for the last like 7 or 8 years at this point, and we decided to build a book club. And that's actually how I found Atomic Habits. It was our first book club read and have been reading it since then. And so our book club pick of this month was The Moon is Down by John Steinbeck. Super short book. I didn't know it existed. I've only ever read Of Mice and Men by him. Super short, to the point. It's about an occupied town, and it flips between the perspective of the town people and the mayor, and then the military who occupied the town. And so you're seeing how the town people is reacting to it, how the military people don't want to be the ones occupying. They want to go home themselves. They don't want to be in this town. And so it was a very powerful read. And it was a little tough to read it, just considering the current times, without getting too much into that. But I would recommend reading it. Like I said, super short book, straight to the point. You're not getting bogged down by like big words and things that are just too flowery and too descriptive. Like, it's to the point of like, here's how the town is feeling. Here's how the military is feeling. And I thought it was really good. I wouldn't have picked it on my own, I will be honest. And I gave it 3.5 stars. So, really good. And that brings us to the final book that I read this month, The Witching Flower. So this is by a local indie author, S. Fraser. It is about a fall cozy town where there is an annual bake-off. And so she's trying to win it for the first time in years. While the bigger story around it is there's this powerful warlock who has captured all of these witches and warlocks and trapped them into this town. And so he has taken away all their memories, makes false memories, and made this town to be what they think it is now. And so she has to try to regain her memories and defeat the warlock before it destroys everybody. Super cute, super cozy. Romance was sweet in here. I like how it switched between the main character's perspective, this other guy's perspective, and like how it bounces between them while they try to like uncover the memories and figure out what's going on. My only critique is the battle at the end. I wish it was longer. I wish there was more of it. I know this is mostly like a cozy comfort book, but I really enjoyed the battle scene at the end and I wish there was more of it. And so with that, I gave it 4.25 stars. And so I'm looking over and checking my story graph because I can't remember what I gave my star ratings, and so that's been an issue. But I'll get better with time. And so yeah, so really loved it. Highly recommend picking it up on Amazon. I think they have it on Kindle version as well. And I actually got it signed because I went to a book fair last year and got to meet a lot of local indie authors, and it was so much fun. So with that, that's all the books that I've read in January. I felt like I read a ton this past month. Per my story graph, I'm 2 books ahead currently of reaching my goal of 65 books. We'll see how long that lasts. I feel like normally I always start off like high at the beginning of the year. Usually by the summer I dip down and read less books. And then by the fall and winter, I'm back either on track or hopefully passing it. And so we'll see how this year goes along. And so I want to talk about a couple like hopefuls that I wanted to read for February. Let's see if I can do it. So I want to finish Funny Story. I started it in January, but I started it towards the end, so I haven't had the time to finish it. I want to start the Bridgerton series and get through that. I really want to focus on a romance books for the month of February just because it's Valentine's and I want to get in the mood, and I'm such a big mood reader. And so I'm hoping with all of that, I can do it. Let me know what you're reading in the month of February, what you read last month, and what your favorite book was. Thank you. Like, comment, subscribe, and I appreciate you being here in my space.